Sean Diddy Combs' ex-girlfriend is giving more graphic and emotional testimony. The woman known to the jury as Jane is testifying about a pattern of being pressured into sex acts with multiple strangers while Combs watched. She's even testified to vomiting in the middle of one of these so-called hotel nights, saying Combs responded, "Good, you'll feel better now," and prompted her to continue. Combs has pleaded not guilty to all charges, and his defense team says any sexual encounters were consensual. ABC's Rena Roy and legal contributor and criminal defense attorney Shauna Lloyd are outside that courthouse with more. Rena, what's the latest?
Well, Diane, Jane has told the jury that whenever she tried to resist having sex with other men, that Sean Combs sort of had a pattern of behavior that included things like persistency and love bombing. At this point, the jury has seen a lot of text messages between Jane and Sean Combs. One where Jane says, "I'm not trying to have sex with strangers to fulfill your fetishes." And Combs tells her, "You got it all wrong." Jane says she felt obligated to participate in those hotel nights because Combs was paying her $10,000 a month rent. She says he still is to this day. And the jury also saw a text where she says, quote, "threatening me with the roof over my head ever since I got here." She also sent another message at one point saying, "I know I was consenting like you said in the videos. I don't look like I didn't want to be there." And when prosecutors asked her if she did consent, she said, "Now I'm not sure," explaining that through therapy, she is now realizing that maybe she didn't want to be there.
Shauna, Jane says she felt pressured to keep performing these sex acts because Combs was paying her rent. How will prosecutors try to link that to the charges he's facing, and how do you think the defense is going to try to use that?
So what the prosecution is going to do is they're going to look towards this as the sort of fraud, the inducement, the coercion, right? Because that's what they have to prove in regards to Jane, is that he forced her into these acts. They're using the home, the leverage of not paying the rent, as well as the promises of additional acts he was supposed to commit as the fraudulent inducement to get her to act in these activities. Now, we're going to see the defense push back against that in the fact that this rent paying didn't actually begin until 2023. They were in the relationship since 2020, 2021. We're also going to see the defense attack this idea. Even on the stand, she says, "I was consenting." She says, I was mad at myself for allowing myself, which means that you actually made the decision to go along and to agree to the act. So you're going to see the defense say that that speaks to what her willingness was versus the fact that she was coerced. I think we're also going to see the defense hone in on the idea that this rent wasn't being paid until well into the relationship. And she said that she wanted a big, beautiful home when he suggested an allowance. So I think that's how they're going to attack this and show that these things were not actually coercion or force. These were just mere transactions in this seemingly transactional relationship.
Shauna, they've also read a lot of text messages and played voice notes they say Diddy sent Jane. What stood out to you there about the messages and also the reaction in the courtroom?
So the messages are really so you can hear his tone of voice. I think that's really what the prosecution is trying to hone in on. They want the defense to hear when he says things like, "I'm not doing that anymore. We're done." They want to hear tonation. They want to hear, especially because he may not take the stand, which is very likely. They want to convey that to the jury. And so that's why they're reading these text messages to give context, because a lot of their conversations happened via text, not over the telephone. So she's talking about why she didn't want to do these things and how upset she is about having partake in these hotel nights, and that she feels as though they are violations of her. And then we see his response back, "I didn't know that you didn't want to participate." And so it gives color to the jury so that way they can see it. The jury's tuned in. I mean, they're taking notes on some of it. A lot of it, they're kind of sitting back and more so taking it in. It seems like they're looking at the bigger picture as opposed to the individual line-by-line text messages.
Rena, what are you watching for next?
Well, Diane, prosecutors are expected to take the entirety of today to finish up their direct examination. So we'll likely see the defense start their cross-examination probably tomorrow. That will likely take the majority of this week as we see them sort of revisit the testimony that we've been hearing from Jane over the last 3 days as they try to poke holes in her testimony and cast doubt on Jane in front of the jury.
All right, Rena Roy, Shauna Lloyd, thank you both. And for more on the Combs trial, catch the ABC News Live show Burden of Proof, the case against Diddy, every night at 5:30 p.m. Eastern.